Today we do the Bible, the most influential book in human history. And we'll discuss why the Jewish people are so creative. Today, the most creative people in the world are Jews. In the past 20 years, there have been three extremely influential individuals: Karl Marx, Sigmund Freud, Albert Einstein. They're all Jews. So why are Jews so creative? And the answer is the Bible. Okay? So let me provide some background as to how Israel, the nation of Israel, was first formed. So remember, the Bronze Age, the Middle East was the center of the world. Okay, so you had Egypt, then you had the Levant, up north is Anatolia, across the Aegean is Mycenaean Greece, and this is Mesopotamia. If you look at this map, the center of the world really is the Levant. And at this time in history, the Levant is really a colony of Egypt. Okay, this place is called Canaan. Now, the thing about the Egyptians is they didn't like to go outside of Egypt. So in order to control this colony, the Levant, which is strategically very important, they use Greek mercenaries, okay? Mercenaries from abroad. Many were Greek, but there are some other countries as well. Also at this time in history, there's a lot of religious strife in Egypt. And a lot of the priests who lost out in this struggle, they were exiled to the Levant, okay? So you also had some Egyptian priests in the Levant. You also had the hill people of Canaan, okay? Hill people. They lived in the hills, they farmed. You also had nomadic pastoralists, nomads, because this place was a center of trade. So you had bandits, you had people who traded, and you also had people who raised livestock. So another way of saying this is the Levant, it is a multicultural melting pot. Lots of different groups of people. And at this time in history, there's no concept of nation or race or ethnicity. It was very common for people to just intermix together. Okay? But then what happened, of course, was the Bronze Age collapse. And what that meant was that now you have this surge of refugees coming through from North Europe and from Western Europe and overwhelm the former empires, okay? So Mycenaean Greece is destroyed. The Hittite Empire of Anatolia is destroyed. And the sea peoples are attacking Egypt. But Egypt is pretty strong, so it's able to resist the attack. And what the Egyptians say to the sea peoples is, listen, don't attack us, we'll settle you somewhere else. We'll give you land somewhere else. And so they were put in the Levant, okay? And these people are called the Philistines, and they're in the Bible. The problem is that there's already people in the Levant, and so they are a threat. And so these people now, the mercenaries, the Egyptian priests, the hill people, the nomads, they're forced to come together as a new alliance to fend off against the Philistines. Okay? And this grouping of people will give us a new nation called Israel. And at first, they have to elect a king in order to unite them against the Philistines. And they elect a king called Saul. So Saul is the first king of Israel. He has a mercenary named David. And remember, what's very common in history is for mercenaries to rebel against their king and become a king himself. That's what David did. But now that David is now king, he has three major problems. The first problem is legitimacy. Why are you king? We elected Saul as king, but you stole the throne from him, so why are you king? So the first big problem that David faces is one of legitimacy. Second is the problem of unity. Because remember, Israel at this time, diverse coalition. So how do you unite these people together? Okay, and the third problem is differentiation. Why are we different from the Egyptians, the Anatolians, the Mesopotamians, the Philistines, okay? So to solve these three problems, what David did was three major innovations that would forever change human history. The first is introduction of a patron god named Yahweh. Okay, so what David says, like, Yahweh is our God, and our God is better than the other gods. Okay? So what the Bible's trying to do is trying to explain who Yahweh is and trying to explain to everyone that Yahweh is a better God, a superior God than every other God that came before him. Okay? That's number one. Number two is the centralization of religion through a temple. So what David says is, okay, if Yahweh is our God and he's the best God, we need a house for him. So what we're going to do is we're going to build a temple in Jerusalem, and that's where he will live from now on. And by doing this, what David's really doing is centralizing the religion. When you do that, you give jobs to Egyptian priests, who will now be your main political ally. Okay? All right? And the third thing that he did, that's very important, of course, is sponsor, initiate the Bible. All right? Okay? So that's where the Bible comes from. The Bible comes from the fact that the Israelite people need to create mythology that explains why they are one family and why they're different from others and why they're actually better than other people. Okay? So what is amazing about the Bible is that it does succeed. It succeeds because of the great storytelling within the Bible. Okay? So in the beginning, we have the origins of Yahweh. And the Bible begins with Genesis. The first book of the Bible is called Genesis, which just means birth, or the beginning. Okay? And in the beginning, God creates the universe. And then he discovers that he's lonely. There's no one to talk to. It's not very interesting. So he creates man, Adam. But then he thinks that Adam might be lonely as well. So he creates Eve. Okay? And that's the beginning. So then the Lord God formed man from the dust of the ground. Okay, dust. So man is made of dust. And breathed in his nostrils the breath of life, and then man became a living being. Okay? So God's essence is in Adam. And the Lord God planted a garden in Eden in the east, and there he put the man whom he had formed. Out of the ground the Lord God made to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food, the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So this is garden, paradise, called Eden. And man was created in order to farm it, to take care of it, okay? He's basically a servant, a slave. And in the center of the garden are two trees, the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The tree of life, as you can imagine, grants immortality, right? The tree of the knowledge of good and evil grants the ability to learn. Okay, so let me explain. Let's imagine that there's this wall in front of me. Okay, so I walk, I hit the wall, it hurts, right? But I don't know that hurting is bad. So I keep on, I keep on hitting the wall and I keep on hurting myself, okay? Because I don't know what's good and what's bad. But now if I know what is good and what is bad, I know, okay, I should not hit the wall, okay? I now have the capacity to learn. And over a lifetime, I will learn a lot. This is the secret of creativity, right? What's really important about this idea is that you need to make a mistake for you to know what is good and evil. Okay, so that's why school is stupid. Because school, we tell you, there's a wall, don't touch it because you will hurt yourself. And you don't touch it, you don't hurt yourself, but you never learn for yourself. Because when you hit the wall, you now are able to reflect and understand how the world works. Okay? So the secret to creativity is trying for yourself and learning for yourself what is good and evil. And what this is also saying is that these two things together, creativity plus immortality, allows you to become God. Okay? Does that make sense? Because if you can live forever, but you're always learning, eventually you will absorb all the knowledge of the universe, which is what God is. Okay? God knows everything in the universe. And you can also argue that's why he created us. Because once you are perfection, once you learn everything, you're no longer capable of making mistakes, of learning for yourself. So what you do is you teach students, or you get students to learn for themselves, and that way your knowledge expands. Okay? So it's a really important idea is that man and woman were created to be part of the creative process. Okay? That's why God created us. The Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to till it and keep it. Okay? So again, the man now is basically a servant or slave. And the Lord God commanded the man, you may freely, okay, you can do whatever you want. Okay, this idea of free choice.